Hey everyone, Ralph here. In this video, I'm going to show you the easiest way for you to build your first Shopify function from scratch. The function that we're going to build is going to hide this express shipping method if any product in the cart has a specific tag. So imagine that you're a snowboard merchant and your shipping provider has told you that the express method is not possible for oversized items such as snowboards. So you want to devise a way in which you can hide the express method whenever such a product is in the tag, in the cart. So if we refresh here, you can see we have both of these, but if we go into this product that we have in cart, add this tag and hit save, when we refresh the checkout, you can see that the express method is hidden. So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to build that function using the Shopify CLI, which is the only way to create Shopify functions. By the end of it, you will have created this function, which you can then go and apply to build other types of functions as quickly as we're going to build this one today. Now, all of the code, commands, resources, and everything that I'm using in this video is going to be linked in the video description. So make sure to check that link and have that as a resource as we walk through this video. And I'll promise you, in less than 40 minutes, you have gonna created your first Shopify function. But enough of talking, let's get into it. Okay, let's get started. So I have three different windows open. I got my browser where we got Gadget, which we'll use for our backend app. Got Shopify partners, and then I got some information in this getting started with delivery customizations that we'll use. I have a terminal open, which we'll use for the Shopify CLI, and then I got VS Code. You can use any editor that you want, but you need to have an editor that you can use to edit local files that the Shopify CLI generates. But let's start with the backend of our app. So even though Shopify functions are hosted by Shopify, merchants need to install an app for the function to be installed on their store. So when you create a Shopify function, you need to associate it with an app through the Shopify CLI, and that app is what is installed by merchants. So that's a roundabout way of going about it, but luckily there is a really fast way to create backend apps for Shopify, and that is Gadget. If you haven't heard about Gadget, it is the full stack Shopify app builder, which allows you to build apps in minutes. You can go ahead and sign up for free at gadget.dev and just click start an app. I naturally have an account because I work at Gadget, so I'm just going to go ahead and go to gadget.new, which is the screen that you'll see at the end of your sign up flow. Here we're being asked to create an application or name our application. So I'm just going to call it Ralph's Function Demo. And then I'm going to hit get started here. And what that does is that Gadget goes ahead and creates a fully hosted app backend for us. We can use that for anything that we like, but naturally today we're going to build a Shopify app, so we'll use it for Shopify. And this screen might look a little bit different by the time you get around to trying this tutorial, but you would be selecting the partners option here. And then Gadget is asking for the Shopify CLI and the Shopify client secret. And to get those, we need to go to our partners dashboard. If you don't already have one, go to partners.shopify.com and create a partners account. It's free and it's needed for you to create apps as well as development stores that are free to create and play around with. Once you're in here, go ahead and select apps, and then you select this create app. We'll create an app manually, and then we'll name this Ralph's Functions tutorial. And here we're going to get our client ID and our client secret. So we'll just copy those, paste those into Gadget like this, and then we'll hit connect and don't save this. What you're seeing on the screen here in Gadget are all of the various Shopify APIs that you can integrate with when you're creating your Shopify app with Gadget. You can see it's a long list because Shopify has a lot of various APIs. We don't necessarily need to use products, but I'm going to show you how it works. So I'm going to select the product model here. There are submodels as well, such as product image, product option, variant, etc. But if I'm not interested in using those for my apps, I don't need to add them, and I don't need to download and store any data that I don't need. If you go ahead and select some of these, stay away from event unless you really, really need it. It's a noisy option, and it's going to download a lot of data from Shopify to your Gadget app that you'll ultimately end up storing and potentially paying hosting fees for in case you would go over the free monthly cloud resources. If you're building a public Shopify app, there's also a lot of other options that you can select here that you might have useful for when it comes to billing, app installations, and other things. But for this tutorial that we're doing today, we don't really need it. And if you ever change your mind, you can go in and edit a connection and add or remove things in the future. So you don't have to get it right the very first time that you select these. Now, what we did here on the left-hand side, or what Gadget did, is that it spun up these data models in a local database. You can see all of these fields are related to the Shopify API and all of the product information. So whenever Shopify admits a webhook, create, update, or delete, Gadget is listening to that and updating your local database so your Gadget app is always up to sync. But now let's go ahead and finish this connection that we started by clicking on this button here. And here we can see that we have an app URL and allowed a redirection URL. We want to paste those into Shopify to make sure that Shopify understands where on the internet our app lives. So in our partners dashboard here, we're going to click App Setup. And then here, we'll replace the app URL with this Gadget URL. And then we'll go ahead and paste this allowed redirection URL. And then we just hit Save. Because we're using products, there's no customer data, etc. Otherwise, there's a few other steps. But for now, we're done. And if it wasn't for the fact that we're building an extension and need to use the Shopify CLI, you could go ahead and install this app on a store using OAuth, and you would have created your app backend installed on a store in just a few minutes. But because we're doing extensions, we gotta use the Shopify CLI to do a few things before we go ahead and install this app on a store. And to do that, we're gonna use the terminal here. And again, as a reminder, all of these commands and code files that I'm using in this tutorial is available in the link in the video description. So don't feel that you have to write down what I'm using. They are there. You can go and copy and paste and follow along there. So to kick off the Shopify CLI, make sure that you go to a folder in which you want to store your app that you're creating on your local machine. I got a Functions tutorial folder that I'm using, and once you're in that folder, you're just going to go ahead and type npm init at Shopify -app at latest, /app at latest. Then you can just go ahead and click enter, and that is going to start the Shopify CLI. And there'll be several steps along the way, and I'll try to talk you through them. So first, we gotta name our app project. That's just what the project is going to be named on your local machine, the folder that is going to be created. So let's call this My Shopify Function Tutorial. Right, not allowed to use function in these, Shopify in these names. So it's going to be My Function Tutorial. And then what template do I want to use? I'm going to use Node because that's what I'm familiar with. And what Shopify is doing here is that it's installing a bunch of dependencies and creating files and folders on a local machine, essentially scaffolding an app project for us. It'll usually take a minute or two, so I'm just going to shut up and then we'll fast forward until it's done. There we go. Amazing. So what we now have on our on our machine here, we hit clear here, ls. We have a folder which is my function tutorial, which is what we named our project. And in here we have a bunch of files and folders. Now you can see that there's a web folder in here. We don't need that because Gadget that we're using has a React front end out of the box that we'll be using. So I'm just going to go ahead and do rm-rf web to just remove it. And that is slow for whatever reason on my computer. Should usually just take a second. And now what we'll do is that we'll run npm run dev, and we'll jump into the CLI and do a couple of other selections in there to take the steps towards creating our function, which is a type of extension essentially. And this is the way that you have to do whenever you create these extensions. You have to go through the CLI. There's no other way of doing it. So now Shopify asks, do you want to create this project as a new app in Shopify, or do you want to use an existing app? We have already created an app here, right? Like we got Ralph's function tutorial, so we're going to go ahead and use that. So I'm going to say no, connect it to an existing app. And then we got a list of apps. I have a bunch. The one that we created is most likely at the top. So I'm just going to go ahead and select that. And then we got to select which store we want to use to view our products when we do the development. So I'm going to select my Catalina wine mixer store here. And worth noting is that when you're creating an extension here, you need to have the Shopify UI, Shopify checkout extensibility. Can't remember what it's called. Let's check. If you go to your stores here, you should see this checkout extensibility preview selected. If your store doesn't have it, there's no way to add it after the fact. Just create a new store and select developer preview, checkout extensibility, and create a new store. They're free to create test stores, so do that. Otherwise, nothing of what we're going to do from here on out is going to be visible or work on your store. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and close that. Now you can see that we're seeing a few things appear on our in our terminal here. We actually don't need to run this, so I'm just going to go ahead and not sure why my command set isn't working. That's strange. So what you would normally just have to do is do Control C to kill the server. Not sure why I couldn't do that, but we don't need to run the server. So what we're going to do is in here, once you've hopefully been able to kill the server, we're just going to run npm run Shopify app generate extension. And I have some dependency issues, so I'm gonna do --force. You shouldn't have to, so don't do it unless you have dependency issues and you're too lazy to fix them, like I am. But I'm gonna use --force. So npm run Shopify app generate extension, and this is gonna allow us to generate an extension. And here Shopify is gonna show us a list of different extensions that we can choose from to generate. There's a bunch of different ones. I have another tutorial of how to create a checkout UI extension, but here we're going to be focusing on functions, and specifically we're going to be using this delivery customization. So right now it's number 5. Who knows, in the future it might be different. So function delivery customization. So let's select that. And now we got to name it. So every single app can have several different extensions. So make sure to name them something that makes sense to you and that makes sense to merchants. So let's call this the delivery method hider. And then what would you like to work in? I prefer JavaScript, so that's what I'm going to select. And if you choose a different language here, some of the steps that we're going to walk through from here on out is going to be different. So if there are other languages that you prefer to use, you got to go and find some documentation, because it won't be exactly what I'm doing in here. And if you prefer, just use JavaScript, complete this tutorial, and then go figure out how to do it with, say, Rust or whatever you prefer to use. And similarly to what the CLI did, scaffolding an app, generating files, what Shopify's CLI is doing here is generating all of the files needed to run this extension. And the CLI is something that you would normally use when you want to create the boilerplate for an app backend and front end, and then you got to go self-host that somewhere, do all of various configurations that are needed that usually take a day or two if you're not experienced. Since we're using Gadget, we don't need to do that. We are only using the CLI here to generate this extension that is then hosted on Shopify, while we're using Gadget as our backend and our front end. In this tutorial, we're not going to be using the front end of Gadget, but in a future tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can add the ability for merchants to configure this function that we're creating. But for now, we're just going to keep it simple and hard code some values in this function to show you how a function works, how you develop it, and then in a future video, we'll sort of extend on that. All right, so there we have it. Now, the next step here is to go ahead and install this app on a store. So I usually open this select store in a new tab. And then we selected Camelina wine mixer. So go ahead and install this app on your store. And like I said previously or earlier in this video, when you create an app with Gadget, you get the OAuth mechanism out of the box. You don't need to configure that. You don't need to set that up. It just works. So everything that you get when you create a Gadget app is essentially available for you to skip all of these steps that you might not know how to do, or that will take you a bunch of time. And apps that come built on Gadget are sort of pre-configured to pass the Shopify App Store review flow as well from a technical perspective. And what you're seeing here, even though we're not going to use it, I just quickly want to show you, this is the embedded React frontend that you get out of the box with Gadget. So if we head over to Gadget, we have a frontend folder here. If we go to the shop page, just want to show you something nifty that helps you speed up your development workflow. So we're just going to go ahead and see, it says successfully connected to Shopify. Check this text. Just going to add something random there. If we go over to our embedded app, you can see it shows up here. So Gadget has what's called hot module reloading, which means that when you edit your front end here, it automatically updates. And this is in the development environment. Once you publish it to production in Gadget, which you do with just a click, this obviously is not something that you can do because you develop your development environment, then push it to production. Again, we're not going to use the front end today, show it in a future video where we use it, but let's flip on over here. And now what we want to do is to go ahead and edit our function or the files that was generated. So in Visual Studio Code here, we're just going to go ahead and open that folder that was created for us. So once you've opened that folder in your editor, you can see that there are a couple of folders and a couple of files. We have one that is called extension, which is what we're interested in. And because we only have one extension, we're going to see that automatically, at least in VS Code here. You can see it's the delivery method hider. And in here, more folders, more files. In the source folder here, we got an index.ts. This is a file that is interesting to us because this is going to host all of the logic that we're building for this function. So we're going to change this code in a minute. But first, we want to look at this input.graphql. So this is essentially what is telling the function of what input is available to it that it can use. Because the way that function works is that they're essentially just a encapsulated script or a standalone script. You pass it input, it uses the logic that we're generating or that we're creating in that file to run some commands, and then it provides the standardized input. In our case, we're going to be telling Shopify to hide a specific shipment method if a certain condition is met. That's all that it does. So to do that, we got to provide it with some input. So I'm going to go ahead and copy paste from a file that I have off screen here, and then I'll explain what this is. So we have this query input, and then we're going to be looking at the cart, because in the cart we're going to have items or products, and we want to see if any of those products has a specific tag. And if that tag exists, we want to hide a particular shipping method. So we got cart, which includes lines, that includes merchandise, that includes product variants, and those product variants includes products. Those products have IDs, and then we're using a function here inside that is called has any tags, and then checking does any product have this oversized tag. In functions, you can't say give me all tags on any individual product. You actually have to explicitly say does any product have this tag, or does the product have this particular tag, and then you're going to get a boolean back that is either true or false. These obviously don't need to have the same name. This is what the variable is going to be called inside our function, and it just happens to be the same name as the tag, so don't get confused by that. And then we're also asking for delivery groups, ID and delivery option, handle and title. And this is just an ID, and this is the title. In a development store, you have standard and express that are the normal ones that comes out of the box. And if you want to play around with these different ones, I'm going to link you to a resource that is pretty hard to find in Shopify's documentation, but I'll link it to you, where you have all of the various objects that you can go ahead and select in here. So if we look, we have, you can find cart here. Cart has lines. Now I'm just going through this. It has merchandise, etc., etc. So this resource just shows you what the various objects are that you can use in this input. The next step that you need to do is that we need to go ahead and run, I think it's npm run typegen. Npm run typegen out here. Did I just run it in the wrong folder? Right, I was running it in the wrong folder, but I thought that I had flipped over to my extension folder. So go into the extension folder. So now I'm in my delivery method hider, and in here we run npm run typegen. Sorry for the confusion there. So just go into the extension. Typegen with an E. It's good if you spell the commands correctly. And like I think I said previously, the commands will be linked in the video description. I'll make sure that they're correctly spelled in there. So what this does is essentially just updating the function and doing some TypeScript magic, I think it is, and just making sure that our index file here is aware of what input is available to it, so it can say either this doesn't exist or it exists. As an example, the scaffolded example used the delivery customization, and here we're not fetching that, so we can see it actually gets a TypeScript error here, which is fine because we will be replacing it. It's going to copy paste the code and just quickly explain what we're doing here. It's going to look very similar to the previous code that was in there with a few alterations. This function isn't very complicated. So we're essentially looking at our input, and then we're looking if it exists input.cart.lines, and looking if line.merchandise, and then we're returning product and product oversized as a boolean here, and then if and that is set to oversized. If oversized is truthy, we're going to go ahead and create this variable called express delivery option, and then we'll just go ahead and find the one that is called express. This is hard-coded here, so we're finding the delivery method that is called express. Now, in a future video, I'm going to show you how you allow merchants to essentially customize this using the embedded front end to set these values, but here we're keeping it simple. We're just using this hard-coded value in here. And if express delivery option, here we're just going to say essentially if oversized and the express delivery option exists, we're going to run this operation that is hiding the delivery option handle that has this handle that we're fetching up here. And this bit right here is essentially returning the function results to Shopify, which is very narrowly defined. In our case, we can hide something and we have to provide the delivery option handle that we want to hide. So that's sort of how functions works. They're very, very specific in what you can do, and this is what you can do. And if none of that is true, we're just going to return no changes, telling Shopify, hey, we'll run the function, but you don't need to do anything. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like, because the code files that we have done are or coded are completed. So we're going to go ahead and flip over to our root folder, and then we're going to do npm run deploy, because these functions are stored on Shopify. They're run on Shopify premise, so we're not going to be tunneling into our local machine the way that we are, for instance, with checkout UI extensions. So we're just going to go ahead and deploy this to Shopify. Going to get a few questions along the way. Do you want to deploy it to the same org and app as you used for dev? Yes, we want to continue to use the app that we have created. So yes, deploy it. And then yes, we want to deploy and push changes. So I'm going to show you a couple of things, then we're going to go ahead and test this. Okay, delivery method hider is live. Awesome. So something that is worth knowing is that once you've deployed your first function, you have this option called extensions in your partners dashboard. This now has a list of your extensions, which is this delivery method hider. It says it's published. And in here, you got a bunch of various things that can be useful to you. We're going to get back to this in a minute because right now there's nothing in there, but once there is, we'll have a look at this. But for now, let's go ahead and go to our store. And in our store, we're going to go ahead and click View Online Store. And then we want to test if this works. But before we do that, there's actually a few more steps that we gotta take that are easy to forget about. So we have technically installed the app that uses this, but we haven't activated the extension. So in this getting started with building delivery customization that I will link in the video description, there is a step of how to create delivery customization with GraphQL. In a future video, I'll show you how you can do this dynamically in Gadget. So whenever a merchant installs your app, it automatically does this for you. But I want to walk you through the different steps of doing this manually so you understand what's going on. So what it says here is that we got to install the Shopify GraphQL API and run this query and add the read delivery and write delivery customization. So let's go ahead and do that. If you've never used this app, it's super simple. Just click the link. You got to go ahead and select the store URL, the My Shopify store URL, give it to GraphQL right here. And then you gotta scroll down and select the read and write of the delivery customization options here. And this is just giving your app access. This is essentially access scopes. So go ahead and install. We're gonna see the OAuth screen here. So if you're just creating a function for your own store, this is perfectly fine. If you're creating a public app, like I said, in a future video, I'll show you how to do this so it happens automatically when a merchant installs your app that has the function. When this GraphQL app is installed on a store, you're going to see this little API playground that you can run queries in. So now let's go back and copy paste this query. I'm going to paste it in here. And then we can see it says your function ID here. Now, that function ID you'll find in this folder. So if we go back to VS Code or your editor, in the root, you'll find something that is called .env. And in here, you can see you have a Shopify delivery method hider ID. So let's go ahead and copy paste this ID in here. And then we're just going to change the title here. Let's go ahead and then expand that a little bit. And let's call this hide express method when item in cart has tag. Was it hide express? No, oversized. Oversized. Okay. And then we just hit run. And hopefully you get something that looks like this. If you get an error, go check the Shopify documentation. Make sure that you've selected the scopes that you had to do. But now this has been activated on the merchant store. And what we can do is if we go back to our Catalina wine mixer admin here, we go to settings. Functions are visible at various places in the settings of a store where they belong. We're dealing with a shipping and delivery function. So let's click on shipping and delivery. And here you can see delivery customization, hide express method when item in cart has tag oversized. You can manage it. You can go ahead and deactivate it, delete it, etc. but let's not do that now. We want to test it, right? So this is active on the store because we just activated. Let's go ahead and try it. So like I said, we want to be able to hide the express delivery option for items in our cart when they are oversized. So we're going to go ahead and add a snowboard here, add to cart, go checkout, and then we expect as we go through checkout that we're not going to see the express payment method. So let's go ahead and continue to shipping. And here you see it says standard, because if we go, I had already added the tag. I was not supposed to do that. I was gonna say, oh, it didn't work because we were supposed to add the tag, but when I prepared for this tutorial, I added it and I forgot to remove it. So what you can see here, we had the oversized tag already applied. If we remove that and refresh here, the function immediately picks that up. Oh, I forgot to save. So now that we've refreshed, once it's saved, you can see that the express method is back here. We have a little UI bug where it selects the shipping method. So whenever we add this oversized tag to any product, it automatically gets hidden. And that works however many products you have in cart. So if we go ahead and add, let's take this liquid snowboard. Let's add that to cart, and I have not, as far as I know, added a tag to the liquid snowboard, so we're just going to go ahead and show you that. So let's go to shipping, and you can see standard express. Let's go ahead to Catalina wine mixers here. Let's find the liquid snowboard and add the tag. This is the liquid one. Add oversized. Remember to save, which I apparently don't always do. And again, this doesn't have it. We have now added it to this, so it doesn't matter if you have 1 or 20 products in cart. If one of them have this tag, we're going to be hiding the express checkout method. And again, if we in here in settings, the merchant would go ahead and deactivate this, it is not going to work. So let's just show that, and then we'll show a little bit of the developer experience here as well. So if we deactivate this, or just go ahead and refresh this, even though the tag still exists, you're going to see Express shows up. Now, the last thing that I want to show is in Shopify Partners. I showed you this. Let's refresh, and we're going to see that there's a couple of things in here now. So whenever a function runs, Shopify leaves this run detail where you can go in and check. So imagine that you're developing and you're trying to figure out what does actually the input look like, what does the output look like. Here you can go in and click. Once you've been in checkout, it has loaded the function. You can go in and check what was the function got in input and what was the function output. So in this case, it's from one of our previous run, not the most recent. We can see that we're passing in the cart lines, merchandise, and just like to make sure that it hits home, this is our input that we've defined from a schema perspective. These are the values that we're getting. So merchandise, product, ID, oversized is true, oversized is false for this other product. Here we have our delivery groups. And then you can see the output that was provided back to Shopify is this operation hide delivery option handle. So when you're building a function, this is super useful to create a function, go ahead and load it up in your checkout and see what does the input look like, what does the output look like, in order for you to iterate or to essentially debug if something isn't working as expected. Okay, that wasn't that hard, right? Congratulations, you've now built your first Shopify function, and you can go ahead and apply what you've learned here today in building other types of functions that Shopify allows you to build. As I mentioned, I'm considering adding a second part to this tutorial that will teach you how to create an embedded UI where the merchant can configure a function like this. If that's something that you would like me to do, make sure to comment on this video to let me know. And while you're at it, if you can add a like, that's super appreciated. Go ahead and subscribe as well to get notified if I do release that video in the future or any other videos that I might add. If you have any suggestions, let me know. I'm happy to explore other parts of Shopify that can be useful for you. But for now, thank you so much for watching this, and I might see you in a future video. Bye.